Have you wondered, as a sensitive, spiritual business leader, how AI is going to impact your world, your employees, and humanoids all over planet Earth? Well, if that's so, this is the episode for you. I'm so excited to have as my guest today Adriana Vela. She is a brain science expert, a very successful entrepreneur, and a best-selling author. Welcome to the show, Adriana.
Thank you, Adele. It's just such a pleasure to be here and an honor to be invited to your show.
I am so excited because AI is setting the world on fire. Unless you have been hiding under a rock lately, AI is coming out of everybody's ears. Whether you're a business owner, whether you are a philanthropist, an author, there's an AI for you. And a lot of people are feeling very unsettled by it. Adriana, wouldn't you agree that the development of
Absolutely.
AI is probably even bigger in terms of impact and scope to the steam engine? Wouldn't you agree that this is a fundamental change to a lot of things in our world?
Absolutely. It's a fundamental change. And so yes and no. And so the reason it feels just so gigantic, that it really is the founded in the fact that our communication is just more prolific. And to that extent, the news travels much faster, and we just get it from so many different channels. Is it as monumental? It perhaps, I mean, the fact that it can change the way we do business, absolutely. But things like the steam engine, the internet, all those things revolutionized the way we do business. The steam engine was how we would get goods across different parts of the world much faster, more reliable. So there's always a huge impact to major new technological inventions. And because over the past 3 decades, I've studied I can't say every single one because that's impossible, but I've studied those major evolutions of technologies. And there's a pattern that follows a new invention. I've studied it both from the business side as well as just from the impact on society.
On
And I've been
Yes,
fascinated by this.
it's fascinating. That's why I wanted you on this show, because we were talking in the pre-chat, ladies and gentlemen, about patterns that are starting to evolve. I know I've noticed a few. And this is a space that really hasn't been discussed very much yet. AI is still new and people are chasing the tools, and every other day a new one comes out. But my goodness, if we take a step back and just look at this from patterns that we've seen in history with a new change, patterns in behavior. I'm noticing changes in the way people are in engaging with this thing that's not human. And some of that is exciting. Some of it, well, I don't know. So let's kick off a juicy conversation about patterns around AI. Take it from there, Adriana. What would you like to open with?
Okay, so yes, thank you. The patterns are so important, but I do need to preface that the patterns have been evolving in society, with technology. And with every new technology, there are a lot of benefits, but there are also setbacks, and there's counterintuitive impact in setbacks. Just to give you an example, the smartphones, they were designed with the idea to communicate through all these different apps, communicate in a much better way, stay in touch with people that was more difficult to stay in touch with, and through social media and so forth. However, the intent was not to change people's behavior, to just be on the phone and not paying attention to what's going on around them.
You mean
And
that they weren't originally designed to be purposefully addictive,
exactly.
intentionally addictive, and now they are. Oh my goodness. I had a guest recently talking about how this is actually changing. The way young people's brains are developing is not quite normal now because of this interruption. And I thought, oh my God, I need to ask Adriana about that. But sorry for the interruption. Keep
No,
going.
not at all. No, please, feel free at any point. That's absolutely correct. Our brains are developing very, very different. now than they were many decades ago. And it is all, that's why there's those terms like digital native, people who grew up with computers before there were, or that grew up with access to cell phones versus no cell phones or no GPS that, like I remember having to print maps and read maps. And today people don't know how to read maps as a general statement. They don't know because they don't have to learn that, but they are exposed to learning something else in a different way. From a brain development perspective, that could be good. That's good or bad. It's bad from the standpoint that we become much more dependent on that tool, like being able to do simple math without a calculator, without your calculator app on your phone. I've seen the development of throughout the decades of people not being able to count change back at a cashier's. And simple things like that that were automatic and intuitive before because we were just dependent on our brain and what we learned to do. So to the extent that we are not using our brains completely and are being fed the content through a technology source, not only will prevent us from developing the comprehensive knowledge that we need to be able to use it later, it becomes more of fast food, disposable content because we don't need to really learn it. We'll just ask. And that not only is it the dependency, it depletes our ability to do more problem solving for ourselves.
Yes, I've in the back of my mind, I've always wondered, well, what happens if there's a power outage and the cell phone towers are down and no one knows how to read a map to get from A to B? I mean, that's people don't have paper maps anymore. Everything is through your phone. And if you don't know the layout of your own neighborhood, just in your brain, you rely on this gadget.
That is definitely a limitation. But there is another fundamental issue as it relates to developing our brains, and that is the resourcefulness, the ability to build those resources, and more importantly, which is a big issue right now, in addition to the lack of attention and the lack of really comprehending concepts and how things are done, we are moving towards being more reckless in terms of decisions and communication that we do. The people who can anonymously through social media bully others or spread misinformation and so forth, that is an epidemic that has been growing through what's called quantum entanglement with technology.
And is this sort of in line with some of the trending you've noticed previously? Like this didn't happen just with AI. This started maybe with the development of the internet. Before that, there was the development of the whatever. Before that, there was the development of the whatever. To your
Yes.
point about a trend, what does that trend seem to always encourage? Like every time we get a new thing, what is the trend that seems to occur?
So that is a really big question. And if it could be answered as like, oh, this is the one trend, there's actually an enormous set of trends that point to, and it's that combination of those trends that have the impact. So it is not like just one trend,
It's not a
but
linear thing. Like it's probably more multidimensional 3D, 4D models somehow.
oh, yeah, yeah, more like exponential model that has so many trends because there's the technology goes across many industries, and what happens in one industry, and this is now from a market perspective because I would do a lot. Some technology impacts or invention comes out of one area and it's focused on solving a particular problem, yet that same technology can be used in a very different way to solve a much different problem. There's no connection except for the usage and the application of that technology. So it's no different than pharmaceuticals, for example, drugs that are invented. In fact, the little blue pill, that was originally invented for, I think, for cardiac solutions. And yes, it was going to be for heart disease. And then they happened to notice it wasn't really effective as the heart disease, but this little side effect was caught. And so now something that was intended for one use is used significant. How has that changed society? And how has that changed the human psyche? Let's say men who had erectile dysfunctions or other weren't as fulfilled and happy or confident. I mean, it affects us all. Cyberbullying affects us all, especially the victim. It's it, but you see, it's so many different things that affect us that are part of just the human body, and the body and the mind are extremely connected. So I come back to it from a brain science perspective. So after spending all those years, I mean, I spent 10 years just on nanotechnology. And by the way, what's happening right now with AI is almost exactly what was happening with nanotechnology. And what was happening, the trends there from nanotechnology are what was happening when biotech started flourishing, because biotech became an industry itself. Before then, it was just pharmaceuticals and medical doctors and hospitals. But biotech was different. So I saw that. I came from high tech and moved myself through different industries because of observations that I was making. And
Yes, and I'm loving this model. It sounds like as you progress through your career and as the industry changed, it wasn't a line. This A became B and B became C. It's more like ripples. That with every new thing, a whole new ripple pond of effects went out, and those triggered other things that
mhm,
sometimes were maybe completely unexpected. Like, no, who would have guessed that an invention here would spawn a whole new industry over there, or a side effect over here would impact people's personal lives over there. And I how you're saying that AI is following a similar model. From me, from a human perspective, I worry about things like the paperclip conundrum that's been described in AI a lot, meaning you give AI this job and everyone thinks it's great and it goes off and does that job because it's designed to do that job. And it spawns a whole bunch of other problems, but it accomplished the job. So I that's just something I wonder about a lot because that's part of the pattern. Successfully make paper clips for you because you programmed it to do that, but it wrecked some other things. So yeah.
yeah, so that brings up, by the way, you just triggered the fact that the behaviors, again, we're human, and the behaviors both from the inventor perspective and the wants and needs from society. Society demands always more and more. But I've always thrown out the question, is it that society is demanding these things knowingly and willingly, or have they been made to believe that they need these things? So
Question. Yeah. How do we know what
it's,
is a true market desire or it's been generated through advertising or something? Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
well, yes. Let's say, for example, if you just wanted to be able to make phone calls, do you need to have all these other fancy apps? Or are they just cool? And because it's cool, you have to have that gadget. So the thing is that they're being thrown at us as, look at how cool this is. AI, look at how cool this is. It can do all this stuff for you. And we take that, and we all want to fight for some kind of individualism, some status, some pecking order. That's human nature. It's been through our whole evolutionary period since the cavemen. You want to be able to stand out and you want to be part of the crowd. If you are not part of that crowd, you feel estranged. And it's really built into our brains, that because it's a survival thing. You want to survive, and you need to be in groups in order
Yes.
to survive. So it takes a lot of courage to be an independent thinker. This is why you have things like groupthink and all these other situations. But when we take actions and behaviors to push things in that way, and I've done talks. I did a talk about the convergence of technology and humans back in 2017, and I mentioned some of the AI stuff even back then. And I encourage people to go and invent, to do good things, but have a purpose, a real problem you're trying to solve. Don't invent things that don't have a problem and then go try and find the problem and tell people, hey, you know what? What you've been missing is this. And and is well, are they really missing it? Not, maybe not. Now, if it does save you a lot of time or a lot of energy, you had to do it the hard way, now you can do it easier, that is great. But we stop questioning how really effective, what's the cost and effect of these is really good for a longer term. And that's what made my job really difficult, in that I was a kid in a candy store with all these different innovations. However, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I analyze them. Do I really need this? Do I really want to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for something that maybe that's, yeah, it's cool, but it's really just to show off. I never bought the first TV, big TVs that were thousands of dollars now you can get for a few $100, things like that.
Yeah, and I've always thought that human nature, and underneath whatever tech it is, human nature remains consistently the same in terms of what drives us, what motivates, what scares us. You're absolutely right. People have a need to feel part of a group. And oh my God, social media might make me feel part of a group, or it could be used to bully someone and kick someone out of the group, just as painful as being physically assaulted, from my understanding of what trauma does to people. So, I mean, it's not that the AI is good or bad, it's merely um, amplifying people's natural tendencies already. And without some intentional discussion about where we're going, I think that's what I'm curious about, because every day there's a new tool. It sounds great, wonderful, save time. And where will all this take us? That's the stuff that crosses my mind, so people can have happier lives and not just, if this AI will save me 5 hours a day of work, what do I do with the other 5 hours? Am I just going to fill it with more stuff to do? Or does that mean people get worked just as hard? It's kind of like, I'm thinking of, was it the factory line that they used to put people on the assembly line and then turn up the speed, saying, oh, you're more efficient now, so you should be able to make 5 times more widgets as before. I'm wondering if that's going to happen, or if there's going to be, hey, we got 5 hours to go spend with your family, enjoy life. What are your thoughts around this? Because it could go either way.
Well, that part, and you just reminded me of that old episode from I Love Lucy with the chocolate assembly line, and they're like, but so while that's obviously good for a laugh, that whole premise depends very much on the culture of the company. Do they want to squeeze out more out of their employees? The business calls for that to happen. And part of why I pursued the brain science and all the research that I've done there is because I started to notice the trends of the epidemic, of stress in people. And when you're stressed, you're less effective. In fact, social media can cause you a lot of stress, not only because it's so easy to fall into the trap of doom scrolling, but also we get, again, bombarded by so much instant media of the same bad things that are happening in different places. Whereas before you didn't hear it, there was maybe one or two radio stations or TV stations, and that was it. And then things that happen in other parts of the nation, you didn't know because that was happening in another state or something like
Right.
that.
You might have to read about it a day or two or three later, but now it's instant. And I imagine with your background, this constant hit of, is it our nervous system that gets impacted? Is it a hormone of this it's constant. Like people can't even watch a 30-second TV show anymore without also pulling out the phone. It's
Right.
happening to us, it seems.
It is, and it comes back down to that ability of us to be able to comprehend things more. Case in point to what you just said, that we get this. Our brains are meaning making machines. We're constantly trying to figure out the world around us. And the more you flood it, and if it's just flooded but with superficial pieces of content, not only it's the volume. Now I can handle volume, but when it is, there's a lot of uncertainty and there's emotions attached to it that are generated based on what you're seeing, it will get more confused and it doesn't make good meaning. That's why people that don't try to take care of their brains and be independent thinkers, to really see for themselves, is what I'm receiving true or not, and not just run with it. This is how we're getting, lazier and more just complacent and more just swim with the fishes no matter where they're going, and you can be going off a cliff without realizing it. So we are not being as responsible and as diligent as we need to be. And this is why in my latest book, the best-selling book, was I have a chapter. In the chapter, it's called The Dark Side of Innovation. That's chapter 6 on my book. And that talks about just sort of how the machine works in society. And you have the regulatory agencies, the FDAs and the NIOSH and all these others, because I got involved in that when I spent 10 years on nanotechnologies. Don't recall if I already mentioned that. And through that, my goal was to help advanced technologies to get them to be commercialized, to help really solve disease and early detection for cancers and so forth. So it's very, very good and can do those kinds of jobs. And clearly, then you have people who don't really necessarily understand it, and there's the people who are fearful of it. So the regulatory agencies have a really huge task in trying to regulate it so that it is safe, but it's hard to regulate something that you can't see. That's at the nanoscale. And if you'll notice, trends wise, there were so many companies, nano this and nano that, and we have nano, and everything was, because it was flavor of the month, right? Relatively speaking. We are seeing it's the same thing with AI. The media is spouting off all the promises. The companies developing these have the vision and it's a promise, but that's not now. It's way in the future. However, the trend has now been, let's let the public do our beta testing. The public are the guinea pigs. And that really is a little bit reckless, because certainly when I was in high tech, you would never release a product that hadn't been fully tested.
Oh, yeah, there should be a test environment with test data. When do you just launch something live and hope for the best? But
Exactly. Is just throw it out there, see if it sticks. So there's so many factors. Investors want a quick return. There's the whole mindset of fail fast, fail quick, fail fast, so that this way you can move on to the next thing. And so it's not with the real end user in mind.
And just for a note for our listeners, we're being very transparent with you here. Adriana and I are both certified AI consultants. So we want to hold the holes. It would be very easy to just get carried away with the sexy tools because they're lovely. And because both Adriana and I care about human experience. What's the other side? We want to make room for a conversation that holds everything so that you as a listener can be more informed, more perceptive, use more discernment. This whole podcast is about discernment to let you know what's possible. Adriana is very committed. Brain science, there's a lot of scientific data that will back up what you're already sensing. Like, gosh, Adele, when I surf TikTok, after 2 hours of TikTok, I don't feel right. I feel off in my body. There's a reason. because as far as I'm concerned, because I have a TikTok account as well, the bombardment of these high emotional registry things, you're not seeing clips of, oh, meditating by the beach. You're seeing one person raging about a political thing, another person raging about something else, and then you see a puppy that you fall in love with, and then this range, it's not normal for every 30 seconds for our nervous system to try to catch up. Because normally in discourse, there's a little bit of a digestion period of content. So I just had to throw that in, Adriana. I just wanted people to know we are very committed to ethical and intelligent AI leadership. That's what we do. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry for the interruption, but
No, I'm
I should have
sorry,
said
because
that.
yes, once it gets started, please do do
Yeah.
that. And you hit the nail on the head in terms of being responsible AI user. And that was my whole premise when I was doing that talk in 2017 in particular. I said, go and invent, but think before you tech. And that thinking is very, very important. So in my practice, I include a lot of the brain science when I do AI consulting, in that I assess the people as well and see if they're ready, how ready are, and I have neuroscience validated tools to do that. In the implementation part, I call that neuro AI leadership and implementation, because you need the people side, and in particular the leaders, because they're the ones that are overseeing their teams, right? So we have the neuro AI leadership and implementation. You cannot implement stuff without the people being on board, and they need to
Everybody
be
listen to
aligned.
that. That's
Yes,
really important. That's really important. It may feel like the world is being taken over by AI, and I'm here to say, not yet. At this point, right now, humans are at the helm, and we'd like to keep it that way. Wouldn't you agree?
absolutely. Absolutely. I have a diagram that shows the brain in once a brain and machine. So half is machines and half is human. And what are the areas where one is better than the other? And we still have at least a couple of advantages over the machines. And one is cognitive thinking, reasoning, and emotional intelligence. So we can infer things as humans based on the data that we see in front of us that machines cannot infer.
Tell me this. I'm dying to ask you, Adriana. Lately, there's been a lot of talk about AI that has empathy built in. So if
Mhm.
you're upset, you vent into the AI and it says something reassuring back. But this is not natural, right? There's something missing if we're relying on AI, which is not a living thing. It has no consciousness, it has no feelings, but it mimics, it imitates, it simulates something that is like it's hacked the human brain to know, oh, when people are this way, they need X. But what do you suppose happens to people's brains when they're getting this type of artificial intimacy kind of thing? That's what AI can be. That's what I'm calling it sometimes. This empathy built into the machine may be useful for some things, but what is your thought around this? Building empathy for therapy into the AI. What do you think of that?
Yes, that is a very, very hot topic. And of course, I have a lot of feelings about that, because there are, think of it as an escalation in support, let's say technical support. So you call about this problem that you're having, and they can't, at that level, can't answer. It's more complicated than that, but they
Yeah,
try to tell you.
first level tech support might be the chat bot, and then you get forwarded to a human, and then if that doesn't work, you go to their supervisor. And yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So perfect. So if you think of that, when you are having a either emotional or some other cognitive issue, you can get that first level support through some machines, because that's just vanilla. Oh, if they sound sad and stuff, then you get them this. So there is, the voice analysis has gotten very, very good.
oh
The
yes.
the visual, not so much,
Mhm.
because I've seen these technologies throughout the last 5 or 6 years where they try to match based on your face,
They're pinging a bunch of faces on a Zoom call and assessing sentiment. And then
Right.
score of what part of the presentation people were really rocking and other parts. And that's meant, to your point, something useful, right? It's supposed to
Mhm.
help you become a better speaker. Yay. And
Yes. But that does not, that the facial sentiment analysis is certainly so far behind the voice. And but then you also have to compare it to other voices. And what if my voice is normally just monotone? You hear that unfortunate person that just has a monotone voice, or you always have some kind of, whether it's a dialect or idiom or something that colors that. A machine is not going to be able to do that. And you can, and the problem is that you can be led to something that where you don't want to go.
so your level of support might take you in a wrong direction,
Mm-hmm.
given because
Yes, to a
yes,
solution that is not the right one. Now, having said that, the sentiment analysis for voice analysis is better, I believe, than most people. And here's why. Most people, humans, are mostly distracted with so much that is going on in their head that they don't really pay as close attention and really detect what's going on in another person's voice.
oh, that's
So,
beautiful. That the machine does a better job than humans.
yes,
Maybe,
because it's not distracted,
yeah, yeah. It's
it's singular
focused.
focus. And it does, because it's just trying to analyze, there's just this one job that it's doing. And it has the ability to do that across billions, probably, of samples. It will generate more accurate decision than, or more accurate response than most humans.
It's amazing. Because I like to think that humans are still better at feeling how someone else feels. And but you're right. Most people are, I'm either worried about what someone else is thinking about me while they're talking, or the voices in my own head, or the phone, or someone walked by. You're right. Our ability to really drop into very focused listening in our environments is difficult. So that's interesting that the bots are now better
Yes,
at that as far as
yes,
voice goes for
right.
getting help in this, like what you said, first level, second level, third level.
Which is then the reason why leaders need to be trained to be better leaders, to really not just do tasks and treat their teams as task performing components of the team. They need to really listen. They really need to be able to observe. And it's not just listen. Well, here's the thing that they hear, they don't listen. And there's a big
Absolutely.
difference.
Everybody pay attention. Because we all know
And
what it's like when someone's sitting there, they're hearing us. It's not going anywhere. They're not listening. They're just waiting for you to stop talking. I think we can all have that. We know what that experience is like, and it's not pleasant.
yeah,
And
yeah. And we're guilty of that. And it can be so innocuous. In fact, my husband just earlier, I mean, I was totally in my head and just thinking about, okay, I need to do this and this and this and this. And he was trying to make conversation. And it was not pertinent or important to me like at the time. So I was just like hearing, and then he says, "Are you annoyed at me or something?" No, I said, "I'm sorry. The fact is I was thinking about these things and I'm pressed for time. And really the things that you were talking about, I don't care about them." I mean, it was like what he was packing to take for a trip. I don't care what you're packing.
I think that's a great example. And then people can take it personally. You don't care about me. You were more worried about something else. I'm not a priority, and blah, 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 blah. And this reminds me, since everybody seems to be multitasking in some way all the time now, was there a time in human history, based on your experience with brain science, that humans weren't wired to be doing this and listening to that? Or is this just natural for humans to be multitasking all the time?
I think in the history of human evolution, there's always something that you also have to be like watching out for. Predators that they can sneak up from anywhere and you're like you're hunting, but then there's, and so you always have to be on the alert for something around in your environment that might hurt you, want to eat you, or or an opportunity that you should pay attention to and take action on. So it's not that's a bad trait or anything. It's actually good. It's how we use it. And when it comes to communication, a lot of people just say, don't really communicate. With my husband, I said, you know what? Frankly, the things you were telling me, I really don't care about that. It's not to be mean. It's like so that he understands that, yeah, you know what? She's in her head doing that. And that was not important. He says, I was just making conversation. And so that clears things up. It's when you don't communicate that you let the other brain make assumptions. And those assumptions are going to be worse than they are because and you said this yourself a little bit ago when you said, I'm usually like in my head thinking about what they were thinking of me or like how I'm being judged and all this stuff. Most humans are thinking about themselves in that way. And what they don't realize is that the other people are doing the same thing. So they don't care whether you messed up on this or messed up on the other. They really don't care. They care about themselves.
Exactly. Like I might be sitting here going, gosh, I hope people get a lot out of this podcast while Adriana's talking, but no one would know that. So I just love being human about this. And yes. I don't really see AI helping us in that. We're going to have to flex our human muscles because yes. I feel like people are getting very passive. Well, then AI will do this for me. AI will do, but we're getting, like, to your point, mentally lazy, I think. Like discernment takes energy. And it's hard to sit and go, I don't know. It's easier just to go to AI or Google and be told what the answer is. And you hope that it's accurate. Yes. And you and I both know that sometimes the data that we get, we're not sure. And teaching people how to discern, I don't know. I think sometimes people just don't want to be working that hard because it is work.
Yes. Well, I like to call it being in the driver's seat of your own life. If you're not in the driver's seat, then you're just a passenger on someone else's journey, on someone else's direction that they're taking, someone else's vehicle, and you're just a passenger. You're passive and you're going to get whatever that other person gets you into, whether it's following a gang or following popular thought, and that's it.
I love this. So we want to be in a driver's seat, ladies and gentlemen. AI can be in the passenger seat, maybe guiding us. Right? Turn left here or turn right there might be useful, but us humanoids get to decide how and where we want to go. So this beautiful analogy. So Adriana, I love this. I don't want to hog your entire afternoon. I feel like we could keep talking. If people want to know more about your work, where can they go to learn more about what you do?
For the AI consulting, it's markettechnexus.com, MarketTechnexus.
Fabulous. I'll put that in the show notes. And okay. I'm so pleased to let everyone know, Adriana and I, we've got cohorts in the AI consulting space. And it's just so cool to have these rich conversations. That's not just, oh, how do I implement this or the workflow about that? We're more interested in the human experience because Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's about having a better life. I mean, what's the point of just implementing So I love these more soulful conversations mixed with the bioscience of the brain, understanding synapses and all that. So this has been awesome. Adriana, I may have you back for part 2. There's so much to cover in this field. Thank you so much. And everyone, if you've enjoyed this episode, hit a like or subscribe. It helps bump this podcast up in the algorithm. Share this with a friend who might be sitting with deep questions about AI and being human, because it's coming, folks. We might as well jump in and be intentional with what we decide to do.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Adele, for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I am so excited about just empowering people to be in that driver's seat of their own life and going where they want to go, not where somebody else tells them, not where a machine tells them. It's where they want to go. And that's where my leadership, neuro AI
Yes,
leadership
we are.
training comes
We
in.
are thinking the
Yes.
same thing. We're taking a voice for humanity amidst
Yes.
the tech
Yes.
chaos. So everybody stay tuned. And if you've liked this, share this with a friend. Thank you so much, Adriana.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much, Adele, for having me again.